So I used to think that I would have preferred to have been an adult in the 80s. A simpler time, a peaceful time, a time when the years would pass and not much would change. See, I was born in the 80s in Soviet Russia. That's me right there. It was a very different world to where we all are right now. I remember, in fact, getting our very first VCR. It was the first one in the whole neighborhood, and it came with 2 tapes, Tom and Jerry and The Terminator. And of course, to the annoyance of my parents, I chose to watch the latter, and then proceeded to wake up with nightmares every night for the next month. But let's take a moment to think about how fast things are really changing. No need to go back as far as the 80s, let's just go back 10 years. January 2008. If we want to watch a movie, well, we've got to go to Blockbuster, we've got to get a DVD, we've got to put it in a machine that's really not that different to that VCR. If we want to do that without leaving the house, well, maybe we can buy that DVD online, have it delivered the next week, but only through a computer, because we're still trying to get to grips with T9 input, send text messages on our Motorola flip phones. Suddenly, everything changes. Netflix announces they're going to start streaming movies. 1,000 titles of admittedly somewhat dubious desirability, and only if you're going to do it on a Windows PC using Internet Explorer. Ridiculous idea, people said. We don't watch movies through our computer. And yet, look at us now. We can't even remember what it was like to have to put a disc in a drive, let alone a tape in a VCR. What seems ridiculous now is not being able to watch whichever movie we want the moment we decide we want to. In this tiny period of time, we've gone from movies on DVDs to movies on demand. We've gone from phones that don't even have keyboards to phones that have voice assistants, so we can simply ask them for whatever we want. Okay, Google, I'm kind of hungry. Can you get me a pepperoni pizza? And then have it magically appear in front of us mere moments later. All of this change in under a decade. All of this change in a, sorry, that was just an example. Now's not really a good time for a pizza. Sorry. Thing is, though, people in the 80s thought that things were changing too fast, too. Every generation thinks that. One day, the young adults of 2050 are going to be looking back, wishing they could live in the times that we're living in right now, when all that happens is, every year, the delivery time for what we buy online shrinks by a little bit, or a slightly faster phone with a bigger screen comes out. Oh, your toaster wasn't connected to the internet? How quaint, they'll think. Every generation thinks that the previous one had it easy. And that shows no sign of stopping. Because the growth that we're going through has always been, and will continue to be, exponential. Just consider this. It took 200,000 years of human civilization for mankind to invent the very first microwave. 200,000 years, and finally we didn't have to use fire to cook our dinner every night. Whether or not that's a good thing is a point we're not going to discuss today, but the microwave changed how we all live. Well, it's taken us here in London maybe 5 years for Deliveroo to entirely replace the microwave as our new baseline expectation. These days, instead of being grateful for quite literally not having to do anything to be fed every evening, we just get annoyed when Deliveroo's down, or our favorite restaurant's not on there, or the rider takes 26 minutes instead of 25. Any sense of privilege, any sense of excitement that we had when we first tried it is long gone. All we have left now is expectation. So this growth that we're going through, this growth that's all around us, it's not just in our innovation. It's not just in movies we can watch on demand or phones that we can speak to. It's in our expectations too. And that's dangerous. Because as Shakespeare once said, expectations are the root of all heartache. See, our expectations are set by the most innovative companies, the ones that provide us with the most remarkable, the most relevant experiences, the ones we remember. But not all the experiences we have are like that. In fact, the majority of experiences we have as we go through our day-to-day lives don't even come close. The companies that provide them are scrambling to keep up. Improving our experience is the #1 priority for the majority of them. And it's no secret that companies are doing everything they can to get as much information about each and every one of us. Some of this information they might be asking for might seem quite odd. I was on this website the other day and was asked for my child's birthday in case they want to send a birthday treat my way. Eeh, felt a bit creepy. Now, they mean well, of course. I actually know this company. It's a great company, and they really do mean well. But as a consumer, the more companies try and get at my data in this way, the more I feel like I need to stop them. I don't really know why they want it. Again, I don't really know why I'm stopping them. All I know is that this niggling feeling of uncertainty, that I'm about to somehow be exploited. And governments around the world have caught on to this feeling. And they're giving me what I want. Or rather, they're giving me what they think I want. They're passing laws to make it harder and harder for companies to get at my data, to use it for their nefarious purposes. But what they don't seem to realize is what they're actually achieving through that is so very different. What they're actually doing is making it harder and harder for these companies to understand me, to understand all of us, and to then provide us with these experiences that we are now starting to expect. I'm guessing everyone here has heard of the GDPR, the EU General Data Protection Regulation, with its 99 articles, with its 1,000 or so clauses. It's ushering in a whole new set of protections for consumers. Not only will it now be necessary for each of us to provide individual consent to all of the elements of data that any company holds on us, those companies will no longer be able to make any automated, machine-driven decisions about us without explaining exactly how they were made. In particular, GDPR gives each of us the right to be given meaningful information about the logic involved in any decision made by a computer. Sounds fantastic, right? Well, as I'm sure we all also know, one of the biggest technology trends of the moment is AI, artificial intelligence. And the AI technology that powers most of these amazing experiences we're now used to is called deep learning. Now, deep learning works through self-taught, unsupervised neural networks. And before you all go to sleep, that's just a slightly convoluted way of saying it works in exactly the same way as our own brains work, to learn and to make decisions. Deep learning can do some amazing things. It can take an item of clothing, a person, and create an image of that person wearing that item of clothing in real time. Deep learning is exactly what lets my phone understand me when I ask it for a pizza. In fact, it also lets my phone understand that that voice is in fact mine, not someone else's. Because you can only imagine the kind of pranks that would happen if it couldn't do that. Half of the audience would have just ordered a pizza. The thing that everyone seems to be missing, though, is that none of this can be explained. Just like our own brains, we know we can get to a decision, but we have no idea which neurons fired and how in order to get there. We can't point to a group of neurons down here and say, this right here is where your decision to order that pizza was made. It was a bad one. Well, that's exactly how deep learning works too. And that means there is no meaningful information or logic that can be written down. There simply is no GDPR-compliant answer. And it's not just companies that provide us with experiences. Some of the most important moments in our lives involve interactions between us and non-commercial organizations that are affected by this exact same issue. For various medical reasons, I spent the first couple of years of my childhood in and out of hospitals, and as I'd go to see the doctors and the specialists, I'd have to bring with me this huge folder of handwritten notes, known officially as my Historia Bolesni, my history of illness. And each doctor would spend most of the hour just reading through it to get up to speed. Then they'd make a suggestion, and they'd write it back down in there. If I ever lost this folder, I'd have to start entirely from scratch. We're not in Soviet Russia anymore. We're not in the 80s. Researchers at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York recently applied deep learning to 700,000 digitized patient records, and were able to correctly diagnose everything from severe diabetes to schizophrenia. Now, that required, by definition, for highly personal, highly sensitive data to be digitally created, stored, and shared. But in a world where that's available, ready to help millions of people, why are we still stuck having to carry around a history of illness? There are at least 33 pieces of legislation across the EU right now hindering progress in this way. This regulation and many others are preventing the most innovative advances that will help companies and organizations provide us with the experiences we now expect. Instead of understanding us better than even we can, instead of innovating faster and faster, they're all going to be stuck trying to untie the red tape around them. There is a reason for all the red tape, of course. There is a reason why all this regulation seems to be a good idea. Everywhere we look, data breaches are happening, all around us. Just last year, Yahoo confirmed that all 3 billion of their accounts had been hacked. Uber lost data on 3 million of us right here in the UK. These are just a couple of examples. There are dozens more. I was involved in a data breach once. In 2012, a whole bunch of Xbox Live accounts got hacked. Someone decided to get into mine. They decided to buy a bunch of FIFA in-game football players and then sell them on. It turns out that's a highly effective method of money laundering. In-game football players, who'd have thought? But I still remember the feelings that I went through. First, I received this email telling me someone was trying to change my password and log in. And I was in a restaurant in Cambridge at the time, and I kind of ignored it. I didn't realize it was serious. I was just confused. But it slightly niggled at me. So I checked my bank, and sure enough, somebody had started to spend money on the card connected to the account. So I got in touch with the Xbox team, and they'd confirmed it. Someone had taken control of my account. That's when the realization dawned. I'd just been hacked. I felt violated. I felt like I had no idea what information they now had on me, what they were going to do with it, how I could stop them. So this fear of sharing our data is real. I felt it myself. But where does fear always come from? Something real? Something genuine? From watching The Terminator when you're 6 years old? No, fear always comes from the unknown. And in our minds, the risks of sharing our data seem so high. Value, on the other hand, seems so hard to rationally quantify and understand. But when we think like this, what we're forgetting is the danger of the exponential growth that's happening all around us. Because like the proverbial frog, we are in the pan, and the heat is going up. Our expectations are growing faster and faster. The gap between our expectations and our experiences is getting greater and greater at a pace which is just accelerating. And because of that, so is the value of letting companies understand us. With each day, the risk-reward balance is tilting significantly towards us being open with our data. Sure, I'm worried about my Xbox account being hacked again, but I'm much more worried about being forced into carrying my history of illness instead of getting an immediate diagnosis through deep learning. Once we realize this, once we start thinking like this, irrationality starts to disappear. We start to want to be open. Not with everything, of course, just with the data that will help companies understand us, help them treat us better. Who here still feels a bit uncertain about all of this? Who still thinks, the risks are pretty obvious and pretty high, but the value, I'm just not that sure about? Anyone? All right, quite a lot of hands. Let me ask you a question. Did anyone in the audience see a Facebook ad for this event? This event that you're sitting at right now. Maybe this ad over here, one of the largest TEDx events in London, coming to the Rose Theatre, or this one over here, 13 performances. Anyone? Yes? Yeah? There we go. Okay, perfect. So you can imagine that wasn't by chance. The team here set up a very specific campaign. Each one of you was uniquely identified, profiled as someone who was likely to be interested in this event, and then targeted directly. And now, here you are, sitting in the audience, hopefully, fingers crossed, having an excellent time. It is precisely because we had access to your data, because we were able to profile you, to understand you, to make a machine-driven decision about you, that you are here right now, having this experience. Once we understand this, once we see the value we could be missing out on, we can start to make our views clear, and global governments will have to get with the program, because right now, they're just doing what they think is best for us. But their regulation is taking us down the path of fear. By changing the regulation to still be focused on securing all of our data, but not preventing the use of it, regulators can protect us in the way that's right, without stifling innovation, without leading to the imbalance with our expectations. And the beauty of all of this is that we have the power to make that happen. Because the strongest voice in this tripartite equation is the consumers. Regulators will listen to us when they come to making decisions about what to do. They're doing it for us, after all. And when it comes to companies, well, we all know the customer is always right. So if we succeed, if we rebuild this relationship in a way that benefits all three sides, instead of stifling us, the opportunities for what we'll be able to experience and what we'll be able to innovate will go back to being unlimited. One of the applications of deep learning technology is known as effective computing. It's a technology, it turns out, that lets machines understand how people are feeling. There's a robot companion already built using it. If we're open with it, if we allow it, it can tell if we're feeling angry, if we're feeling joyful, if we're feeling sad. It can understand us as well as another human being can. And then it can respond accordingly, make us feel better. We live in a high-stress, high-pressure, high-expectation world. And there are two paths in front of us. Both of them have exponential growth in our expectations. Only one takes us to a place of innovation, of balance, of happiness. And all we have to do is choose to go down it. Thank you.